Right. I feel like we would intuitively know.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it. Yeah.
I don't know what else to talk about. Welcome to the show. Today I'm here with my friend Tero, who is the founder of Four Sigmatic Mushroom Coffee and is one of the world's greatest experts on how you can use mushrooms to heal your body and expand your mind in ways you never thought possible. We're gonna dive into all of it today, including the true story of how Santa Claus used to be a shroom dealer. Stay tuned. So I've had the pleasure of knowing you for a long time. You were one of my first fast friends when Sarah and I moved from New York to LA. And I tell people that I learn something new every time you and I talk.
Great.
And it is the truth.
Same way.
Sometimes it is a
Completely
fun,
useless.
fantastical, useless fact, and sometimes it is something that helps me grow my business. I remember one time on my roof in New York, you and I had a couple hour deep dive into doing shows like this. So what you're seeing right now might be a result of some of Tero's helping me get that sorted out. Sounds like your parents always had big aspirations for you.
I don't think they actually did. They were pretty mundane in the best way possible. I feel like a lot of people give the word mundane a negative connotation, but I think it's pretty beautiful. My mom is a teacher. My dad is an agronomist, which just means formally educated farmer. And they would have probably been happy if I would have been a garbage truck driver. I think what they mostly focused on was values and ethics and things like that, like a certain baseline of understanding. And I don't think that's actually beautiful still today, is if I talk with them, they don't really care that much about what happens professionally. So,
or about the no pants thing, they're fine with.
Yeah, actually, this is a true story. That was a joke, by the way. My last name doesn't mean not wearing pants, but
what your middle name really does mean.
It does mean, yeah, that's true.
Well, that's what led me to think that your parents might, like
So-
is that a normal middle name?
Not really, no.
Okay.
A few years ago, there was the word of the year, which I think we texted back when that happened. I think 2 years ago, the word of the year globally was kalsarikännit, which is a really long Finnish word. That one word means to get drunk, home, alone, without wearing pants and no intentions of going out to a party. So you're pre-gaming by yourself without wearing pants and no intention of going anywhere. It's one word. So that tells something about the society. We really love to not have pants on. Yeah.
Has anyone taken that name as their moniker, kind of like Prince did in music or Madonna?
Not yet. I think there's an opportunity there.
Because you're already a single name guy in some circles, but that's mostly because people can't pronounce your
Correct.
last name.
So there's two ways of running with a single name.
Yeah.
I would say getting really famous, Madonna, or something like that.
Leo.
Or having a really, really, really difficult last name, but somewhat easy to pronounce first name.
And unique first name.
Yeah, unique first name. That helps. So, yeah.
And you've done both.
I've done both, yeah. So, yeah, it's exciting that we're doing this. I feel like a few years ago, we were talking about you creating this content. You've created this content for a long, long time, but you've not recorded it. So I think this is exciting that you're putting it out on the world.
Yeah, thanks, man. Thanks for being a part of it.
Of course.
So your father was a farmer. His father was a farmer.
Yeah.
How many generations back?
At least 12 plus me, so 13 generations. And
Of mushrooms?
Could be longer. Finland was 100 years part of Russia and 650 years part of Sweden. And so our old capital was burned, so we don't know, but at least since 1619.
Wow.
And during that time, farming has shifted a lot. So over the years, you had to do a million things. Back in the day, farms would do everything. They were really small, and as
Everything is in all the types of different.
yeah, you would have
food
animals,
plus meat
different
plus
kinds of.
dairy.
You would do your fermentation. You would
Okay.
do your own tools, and then as time went by, you would slowly specialize. Like you would have to kind of create specialization. So when I was a kid, our farm was big, and in today's world, it's small. So agriculture has been shifting really rapidly.
How big are we talking acreage?
800.
Wow. Okay, and mushrooms?
Part of it, it's mushrooms
Okay.
and berries, but oats has been kind of like the last, I don't know, 15, 20 years, it's been the biggest. Just like oat milk is a big thing. Oat is from Sweden.
Wait, is that the Quaker Oats guy with the mustache? Is that your father?
No, that's my uncle.
That's your uncle. Okay, I thought there was a resemblance there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't like him.
He's the black sheep.
He's sold to Pepsi.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Sorry, man.
Yeah.
It's gonna
He
happen.
has the Lamborghini and all. But
Yeah. So, how did your fascination with mushrooms begin?
Yeah, well, I started learning about mushrooms and foraging. Foraging is picking foods in the wild since I was like yay high from my mother.
Like truffles, or do you forage for, foraging just means picking any kind of foods,
Any kind of wild edible is foraging.
Okay.
So going in the forest or any other place and finding things you can eat. That could be leaves, shoots, berries, but also mushrooms, obviously. And my mom taught physiology and anatomy, so she knew a lot about nutrition. And as we were doing it, she would teach us about certain things. And as a kid, I loved like wild raspberries and wild strawberries, those little tiny strawberries.
You can go out and find them in your
and they were
backyard.
amazing. But mushrooms were this mystical creature that was like a little bit like, stood out from all the others, but it was not scary, but kind of mystical.
Due to the existence of psilocybin and magic mushrooms, or it was just fascinating to you as a kid? Because I didn't know what magic mushrooms were as a kid.
No, me neither. Actually, I started learning pretty early on about one psychedelic, the Amanita muscaria. That was one of maybe the second or third mushroom I ever learned as a kid. Was a psychedelic mushroom, just to recognize it. But
so you wouldn't accidentally eat it.
Correct. That would be the reason.
Got it. So this is like when you're like 6 years old or something like that? Your parents like, don't eat this, you'll have visions?
Before first grade, so yeah, 5, 6 probably.
Okay.
And then my great-grandfather helped to found a foraging school, like an elementary school. So you would go to elementary school, and between math and English, we would go in the forest and pick up wild foods and learn how to build nests for owls and stuff like that.
Oh, amazing.
And then I went to study first chemistry and then later nutrition. And about 15 years ago, won an innovation award for discovering like a rare mushroom. So, but
you discovered a mushroom?
Yeah, but the origins.
Just foraging around?
Yeah, almost like that. It was a joke first. It started as a joke. There's a famous mushroom family that is really expensive, and it only grows in the Hokkaido island in Japan, so northern Japan. But it was known to be that where I grew up in Hokkaido had the same microclimate. So it would be like there would be another form of that mushroom growing in our forest, basically, or in our area. But the fascination for mushrooms started early on, but it was among many other things. And it was not until, honestly, into my 20s when I realized that was not a normal upbringing, maybe. We would shower in spring water and do all these things. And,
oh, wow.
And it was not until I started like living in different countries and moved out of Finland when I realized that how most of the world lives. I saw it through TV and movies, but that didn't feel real. And I didn't realize how like disconnected most people were of nature and agriculture until later in my life.
So you would shower outside? Or they'd bring the water in?
Water in, but
okay.
It was pretty cold usually.
Yeah. Got it.
Yeah. So it freezes in the outside because of Finland is so cold. So you would have it inside, but you would get the water from the spring water.
Is that because the water wasn't running at your house?
We didn't have...
or is it because the spring water is the healthiest?
When I was young, it was because that was the water was available. Later, It was because it was also better for you. Like Now there's municipal water as well.
Yeah, fascinating. Yeah. And so you made this mushroom discovery, and then growing up like that, did you have a desire to do something in agriculture?
It's like this love-hate relationship, and I think a lot of people could probably relate to if they look at what their parents did or what their family did. There's part of it is there's a rebellion phase for many people, where it's like, I don't know if I want to do that. Like, what do I want to do? And when you grow up in a small town of some hundreds of people, and you start to go and you travel to bigger cities, it's very fascinating, very exciting. And there was a moment in my life where I was still super passionate about human health, physiology, and anatomy, and like how to improve human performance. But it was like, do I want to be a farmer? And it was also wildly uncool growing up to be a farmer. Yeah.
Okay.
There was a lot of stuff you would do being a hippie, being a farmer, and at least back then, Finland was not cool in Europe, or Scandinavia was not that cool either. So a lot of the things that I grew up was ultimately not that cool. But after that rebellion phase, I quickly realized that that's actually what I enjoy and believe in. So, but there was a phase when I would be like question myself if that's what I actually want to do. But I never thought it would become like a real profession until much later. It's like sometimes when you choose an area that you love, you do it because you love it, not necessarily because it will happen. Or maybe in your back of your mind, it's like, oh, maybe this basketball could become my profession or whatever. But you don't really necessarily believe it. And the world is changing so quickly that a lot of professions become obsolete and new professions get born. Like if you're a video game player, e-games person, like that didn't exist just a few years ago. And now it's a legit profession, right?
Yeah.
Or, even kind of your area of expertise, copywriting has shifted so much. Like the fundamentals are the same from direct response to more of e-commerce, but there's professions that are born in e-commerce that maybe didn't exist before.
Right, like media buyer, for example.
Yeah, it's like the principles are similar to maybe something somewhat similar before, but there's no real school before for it. So like social media marketing, like is there a school for that? I guess there is, but how like good are they?
Right.
So.
Yeah. So for those who don't know, now your company Four Sigmatic is literally everywhere, and you really created a new category with these mushroom coffees and the additional ways that people can use them, putting them in your own drinks or skincare or all the amazing benefits. So where did that come from? Where did you get the idea that people could use these actually for healing and not just nutrition? Or is that known in Finland that they are for healing?
Some of them are known. Chaga mushroom is a big part of our cultural heritage, to the point that the first book ever written in the Finnish language would include, it was called Seven Brothers, and the founder of basically the Finnish written language. In that story of the seven brothers, the brothers would go into the forest and pick up chaga and boil it for healing purposes. So,
oh wow!
So
and what does chaga do?
It's great for immunity and skin. So
okay.
It's high in antioxidants. But it started by reverse engineering. So I mentioned that there was a point when I kind of questioned what I want to do. And part of that, I felt that like, hey, what's existentially, like, why am I here? What am I doing for? And I came across this Gandhi quote as like, most things you do in life don't matter, but you should do them anyway. Like, will you save the world? Probably not, because that's pretty arrogant to think that we as human beings will save this planet that has been here for 4.5 billion years. But I felt that I wanted to do something that is at least like net neutral, net positive, that raises consciousness at some capacity. And I listed out, like, I kind of reverse engineered. Is like, what do I believe in health? I think that the mental mind is the black belt that you want to achieve, but in order to achieve this black belt in life, this mental ninja-ness, you need to have the baseline. You need to get the blue belt and the yellow belt. And the blue belt is nutrition. And if your nutrition is absolute garbage, it's probably harder to reach higher levels of consciousness. So, and that was my area of expertise, is nutrition. And I thought, like, what are the 80-20 rule? I know you'd love an 80-20 rule. It's
love
like,
me a good Pareto, yeah.
What are the few things that really matter? Like, what are the things that really move the needle? And I thought it's not about macronutrients, like did you take 18 or 20 grams of protein for breakfast? I thought it was more about hormonal balance, digestive health. I know you're a big supporter of as well. Brain function and nervous system and immune function. Like, these are the things. And then I listed out things that I believe that help for it. And these adaptogens and mushrooms were at the top of the list. And I hated the hype that happens sometimes in nutrition, where there's a Amazonian super berry that is hot for 9 months.
Like acai berry, for example.
And then it heals every problem and files for your taxes and, becomes your executive assistant for whatever the claims are.
Yeah.
It's
a
probably
get-rich berry.
Get-rich berry, yeah. So I didn't
That one works, though.
Yeah, it does.
That one works if you take it under a full moon.
Yeah, if it's harvested by grass-fed children.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I forgot that. That's very important. Yeah.
It's important.
Well, you get to, with your background, know that stuff.
Yeah, that is underrated part. Yeah. But the good news, it fits any diet. It's also upper middle class certified. So like even if you're upper middle class, you can have it still.
That's great.
Yeah, it's not just for lower classes. So I hated the hype, and I was like, so what are the things that are proven? So Four Sigmatic is just a geeky mathematical way of saying that we focus on the 50 to 100 most researched foods in the world. And some of them are foods that everybody knows, like green tea, lemon, coconut, cinnamon, cardamom, ginger. And then there's more exotic foods like turmeric, maca, ginseng. And then really exotic foods like rhodiola, lion's mane, that people don't know at all, that I knew that would be powerful for health. And in order to get them to people's diet, I knew from my nutrition background that one of the hardest things is to start a new habit. Starting a new habit is really difficult.
Yeah.
And prevention is even harder.
No one buys an umbrella unless it's raining.
Yeah, it's really hard. But what is a whole heck of a lot easier is upgrading. Taking something you do now. It's like, okay, I already shower and use shampoo. Is there better for you shampoo? I already drink a cup of coffee.
Yes.
Is there better for you coffee? And I knew that you would have to meet the consumer halfway. And a lot of these compounds that are good for you they taste really strong, even coffee and cacao and green tea powder like matcha. But even more of these adaptogens and mushrooms, they're very overwhelming powers. So you had to also work on the flavor side, like how to hide them. And it's like, so how do you make them more palatable while still having an efficacy of dosages?
And how did you know they were so powerful? Was there studies that you looked at aside from the cultural knowing? Because that was something that was brand new in America before. I mean, I think you were the first person to make them really mainstream in America and have them on the shelves of all of the superfood juice shops and the high-end grocery stores, not for middle-class people. No, but I remember you were most people's introduction to mushrooms as something that can be a healing force.
Yeah, I mean, I love myself a dose of woo-woo every now and then, but for something to be widely something that I could promote at a wider scale, it had to be something that I would have used myself and felt it. It would have to have a long cultural tradition, so that ancient wisdom of 10 plus generations would have used it and ranked it as one of their best things. And then there would be modern research to back it up. So I wanted all three. I wanted that I had a personal experience with it. There's a lot of amazing foods that we've never included at Four Sigmatic because I don't have a personal relationship with that plant or food. And I think that's also important to have that. But yeah, I would first hear about it through someone or read a book. I would get it. I would try it. I would read the research papers. I would look at is there's enough valid evidence for it, yes or no. Then I would make a few formulations, share it with my friends, and then kind of go from there. That was originally.
You just started brewing it in your kitchen.
Yeah, pretty much. And then since then, obviously, like we've had like.
And it was coffee to start.
Actually,
was that what you were talking about? You were saying it's easy to help someone upgrade something. So when you first thought about mushrooms, were you thinking about mushroom coffee?
No, I thought of a booster that you could put in your coffee or tea. Or it was like similar concept, but they didn't have caffeine or coffee in it. It would be something you could put in anything, your porridge, your smoothie.
Oats.
So it's what I call elixirs, but like you just put them in anything, and that one step made it too difficult for a mainstream person to use it. They just wanted to add hot water or brew their coffee. So it's also fun to know sometimes when you're fighting for success or business, sometimes you're like 2 millimeters away. You're like one small shift in the copy or in the creative or in the audience, and it completely flips over and the performance. It's sometimes frustrating to continue to believe in something because you don't know how close you are. It would be so much easier if somebody would say, is it like, hey, just one word, one color, and you're there. But that was for us. It was like adding it to something else only worked for a more narrow niche audience, but the coffee kind of like made it possible. And coffee and chocolate, hot chocolate. So that was the other one that kind of really worked, is people use that hot chocolate, people drink more seasonally, but it was another way.
Yeah, Dan Kennedy, the great marketer of many decades, talks about an ad that was for music lessons. And it said, this program, blah, 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 put music in your life with this. The ad was a failure until they changed one letter. They changed it from put music in your life to puts music in your life. When you put the S in there, it makes it seem like the program does the work for you. It's no longer something you have to do. And it became a huge success.
And sometimes you don't know how close you are.
Yeah.
And that's hard. You might bomb multiple times in a row.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of business owners, actually in life in general, including love and friendship and other things, we give up on something right if it doesn't work on the first time.
Yeah. So you launched a booster and it failed?
Yeah, it worked for a narrow audience.
Okay. But it just wasn't really picking up a lot of traction.
Yeah, I didn't get wider traction.
And then you decided, okay, mushroom coffee and hot chocolate because it's done for you. You just add water.
Correct. And the flavor profile is more approachable.
Got it.
It's also easier to explain. A mushroom booster, superfood booster, adaptogen booster, whatever it may be. It's kind of like, okay, you need to explain more. And sometimes,
and then you're right there with 10 other boosters at the shop, right?
Yeah, and sometimes they say is like, if you have to explain, you've already lost.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so it's just like the idea of, hey, do you drink coffee? Yes, like 86% of Americans have a caffeinated something every day, right? And 2/3 have a cup of coffee. And you're like, have you had bad effects with coffee? A lot of Americans struggle understanding the difference between good quality tea and bad quality tea. It's just tea. Airplane tea is tea. But every American, no matter where you are, you probably have had a really bad cup of coffee sometime in your life.
Well, British people, because they drink tea so much, can tell if a tea is good or not.
Correct. They have more experience of it. But so everybody's had a bad cup of coffee. Like something like 32 million Americans have an adverse effect on caffeine every single day. And they still continue to drink it.
Don't know anything about
that. They still want to consume it.
I do have 3 different Four Sigmatic boosters in here.
Oh, yeah.
I got the Rishi, the Cordyceps, and the Chaga.
Oh, wow. No lion's mane?
Wait, lion's mane. Lion's mane, I have the red, the green, and the yellow.
Yeah. So Cordyceps, lion's mane, and Chaga. But no Rishi.
No, the Rishi's the green packet, right?
No, that's Chaga.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But the Rishi is for going to sleep?
Yeah, calming. When you're like, almost like CBD or magnesium, it's like calming.
Okay. Yeah, gotcha.
It's not like melatonin that just knocks you out.
Okay, so you put out the mushroom coffee and the hot chocolate, and that started catching fire?
Yeah, and even not immediately.
Okay.
It's also the other part is like repurchase rate is so important. I think a lot of people throw a lot of money on ads and they just look at just like the initial conversions and they look at like, hey, what's my CAC? Especially back in the day.
CAC, which means customer acquisition cost. So how much you're paying on average to get someone to buy something.
Or in a retail store velocity. And people just focus on, it's like, hey, how does this sell in the beginning? And they don't look at the quality. So more customers is not better. Better customers is better. And with us, we had crazy high repurchase rate, but we couldn't like fully lock in the communication. So it took us a moment before we learned how to explain even the coffee even simpler, like even even simpler way of saying. And that's always the challenge is like almost like it's harder to say less and it's easier to say more. It takes more work to say less.
Right, like Mark Twain says, the famous quote, if I had more time, I would have written you a shorter letter.
Yeah, so that's exactly how I think most marketing is like, hey, how do you summarize something? Because people are really busy and they have limited bandwidth. And
so you had to figure out how to tell that story.
Even, like when we were in person, we could tell the story really well, but when we had a really short space, like how do we deliver it in a powerful way? When then people got it, they really loved it.
And that was on the retail box?
Yeah.
And what did you put on there? What did you end up doing that made it really change to high velocity of selling? And or people keeping to buy it? Which one was it that made that? What was the change and what was the effect?
Using less words and having more empty space in packaging it's also the power of emptiness is, I think, very underrated. It's like a lot of people wanna, if you have a space in an ad or even in your apartment, you put like million things, right? Where the power is sometimes in the empty space that highlights what you really want to say.
Right.
And so packaging is very critical in any consumer product. Is obviously you have a limited space. You want to, and there's a lot of legal things you have to add. So it's like limited what you can say. And so the power was like, hey, having the courage to say a little bit less. So that was a big difference.
So what does it say on the box? What made it so successful? Because this thing was in, and still is, in so many retail shops, from your mom and pop to your big grocery store. You just blew up in retail.
Well, that's the hard part is, this is the dilemma I face all the time. I sometimes think that marketing is a tax you pay for a bad product. And that's an outlandish statement. But what I think it tells is, to have a longevity on a product, you have to have a product that delivers on whatever the customer's expectation is. Mm-hmm. And ours did. So that's really, really important, is that the product actually worked. It was you didn't get the jitters, you didn't get heartburn from that coffee, and people felt that the cognitive function was enhanced, right? And that was really, really critical. And if we would have not had that, then I think it would have been dead in the water because we didn't lock it in immediately. If you don't have a product that works, you have less wiggle room. You kind of have to get it right. And it's a lot about consumer expectation. It's like, if your product tastes bad, then you probably want to lead with that so it doesn't come as a surprise, right? You can say that it tastes powerful.
Yes,
yes. You want to highlight that part.
Yeah.
And what to expect as effects. Like if you have a product that you have to wait 2-3 weeks for effects to feel, then you really want to align them, that you have to stay on this routine for a month.
Yeah, yeah.
So you have to like set the expectations. So for us, it was a lot about flavor and effect was what we needed to accept. A lot of people, if you hear mushroom coffee, you assume that it tastes gross. So a lot of the communication had to be around flavor, even though most people buy it for functionality. People buy it to feel better, to solve the problem, but the limiting problem for them to buy it was more around like, is this still an enjoyable thing? So you had to focus on more on that.
And what do these mushrooms do?
The most popular mushrooms are lion's mane, chaga, and reishi. Chaga, main support function is for immunity, supporting your immunity. A lot of people only focus on immunity when they're sick. And like I haven't been sick one day in 12 years. And I think in the days of coronaviruses and whatever, I feel like there's a virus every 18 months.
Right.
H1N1, they just come.
Swine flu, bird flu.
Yeah. And haters will say that helps keep the pharmaceutical companies, innovating. But immunity is important all the time. It actually is connected with your gut. That's directly connected with your skin. There's a lot of reasons why immunity matters. That's chaga. That's great in the morning. Lion's mane is good for the cognitive function. It's good in the afternoon. Helps with, quality of thinking and memory and stuff like that. And then reishi is for stress. So it's kind of like nature's own, instead of a glass of red wine and a Xanax in the evening, you might want to have some reishi and ashwagandha or like a magnesium bath. It's like more natural, holistic way of supporting your stress kind of reduction.
And these mushrooms work for skincare as well.
Mm-hmm. They've been used a long time actually in skincare, mostly
like
because
people just put in the paste on their face?
Yeah, so they hit both internally and externally, but in the Asian consumer, particularly in Japan, have been using it in skincare products a really long time. So a lot of brands that are big in Asia have been using it, even really larger brands like Origins, which is an Estee Lauder brand, have their best-selling product is Mega Mushroom. So
really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So literally billions of dollars of mushroom skincare is sold, but it also because it works.
Wow. Which of these do you actually take and use yourself?
Of these other products?
Of your own?
Oh.
Because you have a lot of SKUs, so it'd be hard to use them all.
Yeah. So usually I'm testing a product that is not out there. So usually I'm using at least once a day a product. Like yesterday, I was trying a product that we might launch in the fall to winter. So like usually I'm testing a product that is not out on the market. It includes a lot of the same ingredients. So I probably pretty much take reishi, chaga, and lion's mane every day, and then I mix up the other ones.
Okay.
In some capacity, but the products kind of change. Now I've been doing a lot of protein. I've done intermittent fasting for like 5-6 years pretty much. So I don't eat in the mornings, but now I've been trying out like first thing in the morning have protein and trying that again after a long break. So I've been taking, it's a protein blend with 2 top adaptogens and 5 top mushrooms. And so I've been taking that and yeah, right now I'm not doing any caffeine because I'm heading into a trade show and I'll be over consuming in caffeine. But like normally I would take one of the coffees in the afternoon. And then in the evening, I usually make chocolate myself if I can. So I make chocolate and I put the powders into my own chocolates.
Like a hot chocolate or like actual?
Actual chocolate, yeah.
Oh, wow. So let's talk about Santa Claus.
Sure.
Santa Claus was invented by someone on mushrooms, or Santa Claus himself does magic mushrooms, or what is the story? There is a story here, and it's a story so compelling you wrote a book about it.
Yeah.
Called
Santa sold shrooms.
Oh, that's right. So Santa was a shroom dealer.
Yeah, you could say that.
Okay. All right.
So I think it's kind of funny how commercialization happens and we forget that a lot of our cultural cornerstones, these holy days, have a long history. Like somebody started them. It's not like Halloween was started 5 years ago. It's like a really long time, and there's a reason why Halloween was supported. Or Easter. Where does Easter Bunny come from? Those are trippy stories. But I think out of all the stories, arguably the world's most famous character is also the most misunderstood character in Santa Claus. So beyond every religion, Islamic people and Buddhist people, they still today, like they celebrate Santa Claus. So you could arguably say that it's the most famous character in the world.
Wow.
But a lot of people don't know its history. When you ask people, where does Santa Claus come from? They like vaguely think that it's from Germany, from the Saint Nicholas.
Right. I think that's what I heard growing up.
Yeah, but it's actually not true at all. If you follow the history, the story of Santa Claus came to the U.S., to New York, which was known as New Amsterdam before, by the Dutch. The Dutch got it from the Germans. The Germans stole it from the Italians. The Italians actually stole the grave of St. Nicholas, but St. Nicholas was actually a Turkish bishop. It was not German. So this story has traveled a long time, and you might wonder, is like, how does a Turkish bishop can be a Santa Claus? There's no reindeers there. Well, it's because the Christian church was divided, but between the Catholic and the Orthodox Christian. And the Constantinople, modern day Istanbul, was the home of the Orthodox, and then Rome was the home of the Catholic Church. And the Eastern Europe, the Slavic culture was more concentrated, and there was a more pagan story of Santa Claus. So the original Santa Claus is like 10,000 years old, and it comes from an indigenous culture, the last indigenous culture left in Europe called the Sami. But because when Christianity came, it was not okay to celebrate a pagan tradition. They kind of evolved it into their own by using this Turkish bishop that they had during the same time, which was pretty ridiculous. But same thing happened with San Pedro cactus and other. So a lot of pagan traditions were mixed with Christianity because people loved them. But when you go back into the origin story of Santa Claus, you start to realize, why do we do these Christmas traditions? So the Sami live in Northern Europe. That's the only place where reindeers grow. It's beyond an Arctic Circle. It's not the North Pole, but it's probably as close as you get to a North Pole where you can actually live. The Sami are deeply spiritual people, and for them, winter solstice, which used to align exactly to the day with the old when Gregorian calendar and Julian calendar changed. Christmas Day was actually winter solstice. Now they're 2-3 days apart. And on that winter solstice, they would do magic. And there would be a shaman. So Santa was actually a shaman. And the shaman was an elder, a medicine man, and many other things. So if you had a knee pain, they would come and heal it. But over winter solstice, they would go from village to village riding a domesticated mammal of reindeer on a sled. They would go and they would do a ceremony, a secret ceremony. And they would use this mushroom that is this psychedelic mushroom in that ceremony. And that psychedelic mushroom grows under the spruce tree, so the Christmas tree. Under the tree grows the psychedelic mushroom. It grows in symbiotic relationship with the roots of the Christmas tree. So in many countries, you put presents under the Christmas tree. And then you would dry it, and if it was a sunny day, the Santa Claus would take the tree with the most sunlight and collect all these mushrooms and put them on the branches hanging from the Christmas tree to dry them up. So they would,
Oh, wow.
And even if you go back to even the German time Christmas photos, you can see little kids holding a psychedelic mushrooms. Instead of red balls hanging from the Christmas tree, you would have red psychedelic mushrooms.
Those big red mushrooms like in Super Mario Brothers.
Exactly. It's the same
wow.
mushroom that Super Mario takes to become bigger and stronger.
Oh, wow.
And Disney Fantasia dancing mushrooms. You know, if you start to look at Snow White, Alice in the Wonderland, all these magic mushrooms start appearing when you start to tune into it. But anyway, so Santa or the shaman would collect mushrooms from under the tree, put them in tree branches, or if it was not sunny, over a fireplace to dry them up. Then on winter solstice or Christmas Day, come with the reindeer, bring it into the hut of where the Sami people live. And Sami people live in these semi-permanent teepees, but they're a little sturdier than the Native American teepee because it was snowy.
Okay.
But there's a hole in the center because there's a fire. Otherwise, without the fire, it's called a kota. And they would go to a kota, and the entrance is really narrow. So if there's a snow blizzard, the entrance will snow in, and you can't enter through the little hole, the crawling hole. So you have to go through the top. So the secondary entrance was the chimney.
Was the chimney.
So here's winter solstice on a beautiful Christmas day. There comes a jolly old man, the healer, the medicine man.
And the reindeer would pull the sleigh.
Yeah, and the reindeer loves this mushroom, actually. There's a BBC documentary with Richard Attenborough where these reindeers are tripping on this mushroom. It's really quite a thing. The shaman would come in and consume the mushroom, see visions, and sometimes the other people would share into that vision and go underworld to ask wisdom, but that's probably why you would see reindeers flying as well and all these magics happen.
Oh, the reindeers fly. Yes, yes. Oh, wow. So that explains the chimney, the tree, the reindeer.
The red shaman. Ornaments on the Christmas tree.
Yeah, the
and
red
the Sami
color.
people believe, like the Avatar movie, they had the Navi people believe in this tree of life, the same way the Sami people believe. And for them, the Pinesia trees are really, so pine family of trees, like spruce is part of that family, are really important. It's like a holy tree, and under this holy tree grows a psychedelic mushroom that allows us to enter another realm through the holy tree, gives us a gift that we can enter another realm. And that's why some argue as well, because of this Pinesia trees, is pineal gland, a source of consciousness, is connected with these psychedelics. But that's
And pine.
Yeah, pine. Yeah.
Pinesia, is
That's
pine
a family
the American
of
word?
pine trees.
Okay.
It's a family of pine trees. So pine and spruce are same family of trees.
Wow. And for those people who don't know, mushrooms are not a plant, right?
Yeah.
It's a kingdom.
It's a separate kingdom.
Like
So plants-
animals, plants.
Bacteria, fungi. And when something is a kingdom, there's a huge array of different kinds of plants.
Okay.
There's actually estimated to be 6 times more mushroom varieties than there are plant varieties. So for every tomato, there's 6 different kinds of mushrooms.
No.
But
6 times more mushrooms than there are plants?
Yeah.
Because they all look, I mean, the ones that you see,
Exactly. That's the difference.
they don't look that different.
Mushrooms are needed for a lot of yeasts, are also fungi. So
Okay.
in order to make bread, wine, beer, cheese, all the favorites, you need mushrooms. Kombucha, sauerkraut.
You need mushrooms for that.
Yeah, pretty much.
But microscopic, like in fungi form?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. So many of the mushrooms are so small that they just look like a mold.
Yeah, you would think of them like where there's bacteria, there's fungi. Where there's fungi, there's probably bacteria. Those two kingdoms really love to live symbiotically.
If you look at fungi under a microscope, does it look like little mushrooms with the heads and stuff? Like
No,
molds and
not
stuff?
necessarily.
No, not necessarily? Okay.
There's many kinds.
And why are some mushrooms hallucinogenic?
That's a very good question. The answer is we don't know. There are theories.
Okay. Is it a poison? Because that's what we grew up learning, that mushrooms are poison. Don't touch those. They'll poison.
It's actually funny because there's way more poisonous plants in nature than there's poisonous mushrooms, but there are poisonous and lethal mushrooms. So there are mushrooms that can surely kill you, but there's only a handful of them.
Okay.
Versus there's way more poisonous plants that will kill you.
Interesting.
Yeah. But in the case of the red mushroom with the white dots, there is a poisonous compound, yet not lethal. But in the more common psychedelic psilocybin family, it's not poison that is happening. It's quite the opposite. One could say that it's the sacrament.
So you, I'm sure, have heard of Terence McKenna's theory. I don't know if he's the first one to talk about it. But
Stoned ape.
The stoned ape theory, yes. For those who don't know, what is the stoned ape theory?
The stoned ape theory is that humans or pre-humans that had a less developed brain and maybe a smaller prefrontal cortex were not yet able to communicate verbally and express words and maybe some other things that we now take for granted for Homo sapiens. But then they stumbled into a pile of shit where there was mushroom growing, and those mushrooms are psychedelic. And when you consume psychedelics, your brain function increases quite a bit. Certain neurotransmitters get activated that wouldn't get activated.
It actually connects new ones, right?
Correct. Neuroplasticity, and you would also have you would be more aware and more sensitive. And the idea is that with the help of mushrooms, we were able to learn how to speak. So that would be like the kind of main part of that theory, is that we know that we only use a fraction of our brain capacity, and with mushrooms, we still use a small amount of our brain capacity, but a lot more than normally. And we can see things that don't exist and make connections that we can, and that helped us speak, basically.
So the theory is that the apes were cruising along, they started eating these mushrooms, they made new brain connections, and pretty soon they turned into humans.
Correct.
Amazing.
And
do you believe that theory?
Predominantly, yes. I think the step one probably would have been they figured out how to get caloric surplus. So with those, before learning to speak, they figured out how to get more calories. And with more calories, they figured out that would help. Because I think those new brain connections alone would not be enough. You would need caloric. Most of the animals live in constant hunger. And one of the reasons why we were able to proceed is we had an excess of calories. And we could spend our time on other things versus constantly looking for food and resting.
That makes sense.
But I do think that, like in hunting and other things, psychedelics were used actively to help us hunt better and get more food.
So there's another theory that because mushrooms are one of the only living organisms that can travel through space, the spores can travel through space without protection. They don't need a space suit or anything like that, and they can survive the journey. And there's evidence that they were here before most other life forms on Earth. Is that correct?
Yes.
So is there conclusive evidence that mushrooms are literally an alien life form?
Yeah. It's really fascinating because I grew up with a really hippie upbringing in many ways, a farming hippie. And then I spent a few of my years in Switzerland with the most scientific people you can ever imagine at the CERN scientific laboratory, the world's most expensive laboratory on the border between Switzerland and France. And there are these PhDs in particle physics, colliding particles together and figuring out like neutral antimatter and the Higgs boson, the most scientific shit you can ever imagine.
Right, and they have that large hadron collider, which,
correct,
if I remember correctly, is a 17-mile long tunnel.
Circle.
17-mile circle.
Yeah.
Where they just launch particles at each other, right?
Yeah. And yes, so I think what's fascinating about that is that if you are here in Venice Beach, California, and you listen to a crystal babe at Erewhon talk about the universe, and then you go and talk to the most scientifically sound particle physicists, they use the exact same words. Universe, energy, vibrations.
Yeah.
And it's pretty funny, actually. But to answer your question, everything is in the universe is from outer space, so from space. And so it might be like the iron that helped build you might be from another star system.
Yeah, that's true.
So that idea that something is foreign to this earth is not that radical at all.
Yeah.
As far as mushrooms specifically, it's also known today that if the earth is 4.5 billion years old, the first thing to come from the sea to the dry land was mushrooms. For the first billion years, they ate rocks to survive, to help build topsoil, and later plants and animals and other things could emerge. But
mushrooms ate the rocks, and that's what made soil.
They're extremophiles, so they can survive in the nuclear reactor in Chernobyl or the Sahara Desert, but also in extreme heat, extreme cold. Mushroom spores can, like you said, survive in every level of atmosphere, including in space. So there's a lot of thoughts that the mushroom seeds would have come here from somewhere else.
How do you kill a mushroom spore? Fire?
It's really, really difficult. Depending on the mushroom spore, practically impossible to kill it. It's more like...
That could be a science fiction movie.
Yeah, it could be. How to kill a mushroom spore. It's a good one. You're breathing in right now. Every breath you take, you get about 6 to 10 mushroom spores inside of your body.
Wow. So we are, in a sense, walking mushrooms.
And bacteria.
And the mushrooms live in there with the bacteria,
Correct.
the yeast,
in the gut,
the fungus.
In the skin. That's why there's microbiome, but there's also mycobiome. Myco.
Okay, what's that mean?
MyCO. Mushroom biome.
Mushroom biome.
Myco.
In everyone.
Yeah, in everyone.
Is that why these mushrooms that we hear about chaga, reishi, lion's mane do so well with humans is because the other mushrooms are like, there's the homies are coming in.
Yes. There's a DNA similarity between them. So the mushroom medicine or healing properties of mushrooms is more bioavailable to us, but also like the bad mushrooms are more easy to hurt us because of that DNA similarity. But
we can't survive without the good mushrooms.
Correct. Same way.
So we have a symbiotic relationship with fungi.
Exactly.
Which are mushrooms.
Yeah. And
for those at home, listen to this, you're a shroom.
Yeah. You're up to 50%. You're half mushroom.
Half mushroom.
Yeah. DNA-wise.
By cell count, is that?
DNA similarities.
Really?
Up to 50%.
Do you think that the mushrooms are really are secretly in control?
That's a great question. Same as the space question is, the answer is we don't fully know, but it would make sense that there's some sort of, they're a very different form of life being than many others. And they have a lot of wisdom, and we've able to prove that mushrooms can, if you put even the simplest mushroom slime mold, and you put it on a maze, the slime mold will find its way out of the maze.
What?
And they put this slime mushroom, again, the simplest form of a mushroom, they've given it all the stops in the UK and Tokyo, and they said it's like allowed it to recreate the metro subway system of Tokyo and the train system, the railway network of UK. And what they found out, this mushroom could create it better than humans could with the efficiency of a computer, of how good of a subway system they built.
How do you speak to the mushroom and be like, hey man, I want to see you replicate this subway system? Like, how do you communicate that to the full?
You put it on the map. You put all the stops where there's a town where you want to stop.
Okay.
And you put it in the center, and the mycelium and the mushroom will help create the subway system in the most efficient form possible.
It doesn't. Okay, so it doesn't know it's making a subway system.
No.
It just knows the pathway.
The pathways. That is the best possible pathway. And
and what you're saying is we figured out the best pathways when we were designing these subway systems.
No, we didn't.
Humans.
We didn't. We did a horrible system.
Oh, okay.
But then the mushrooms created a better system.
Because that's what they do, is make pathways. And some of the biggest organisms on Earth are giant mushrooms, right?
The largest living and the oldest living organism that we know of today is in Oregon, and it's a mushroom size of 20,000 basketball courts.
Oh, wow. Have you met this mushroom?
I have been, yes.
Did you speak with?
I communicated with it, yeah.
What did you speak of? What?
It's like kind of like going to the church, Does it have a name, this organism? Yeah, honey mushroom.
Honey mushroom.
Yeah, just honey.
And how do you speak with this mushroom? Do you take I'm guessing you really did this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you take the psilocybin and then is there a chant or is it just putting your hands on the ground or something?
I believe in intuitive wisdom. So if you want to experience it, we can go there and you can meet the mushroom and then.
I really want to do it. I believe in this stuff.
Yeah. No, you can.
I'm not mocking. I really want to go meet honey mushroom.
Yeah.
Honey mushroom. I assume you really did.
It's in. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's in.
Because I've done
there's a whole
psilocybin,
national
man,
park.
and I've met some interesting things. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a really big mushroom, and you can walk on top of it.
So you can just be in the presence then.
Yeah.
On psilocybin.
Yeah, and have a relationship with it. Have a little convo. Maybe you can do a podcast with the world's largest and
that
oldest
would be
organism.
Sweet. Yes, I bet it has a story to tell.
There is a machine. There's a machine.
What pronoun does it go by? Because there's 16 pronouns now.
Oh, you got to ask.
Yeah.
The mushy.
Should we just say they?
They. Yeah. What if they don't want to commit to anything specifically? They're asexual. Mushrooms are asexual.
Okay, they don't have sex.
So, but there is a
what
machine.
Other animals and plants are symbiotic with fungi?
I'm just saying there's a machine where you can plug it into the honey mushroom and it will create vibrations and sound. So if you want to do a podcast with the honey mushroom, you could put that machine in and you could ask it a question and it would reply in music.
No shit.
How about that? That would be the first podcast ever created with a mushroom.
Will you do this with me?
Yeah, we can go there.
All right. So if you're listening to this podcast, let us know if you want us to have this podcast with the honey mushroom, and we will go and make this episode.
Yeah.
Can you interpret what it's saying?
We can together interpret it.
Right. I feel like we would intuitively know.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it. Yeah.
I don't know what else to talk about.
I don't know. Lemurians. What's next?
That's it.
Yeah.
I mean,
great.
We've just discovered that human life itself is based around fungi.
Yeah.
And other life too. That was my other question. Plants and animals, is it all symbiotic with fungi? I mean, plants certainly because of the soil, right?
Yeah. Almost all plants, something like over 95% of plants require mushrooms to collect water and nutrients, and all animals will have bacteria and fungi in their digestive tract and skin. So yes, there's a symbiotic relationship.
What other animals take psychedelic mushrooms on purpose, like seek them out? You mentioned, do the reindeer seek them out themselves?
Yeah.
And what other, do apes?
Well, the hard part is we don't know how those psychedelic mushrooms are to them, but bears, deer, rabbits.
I've seen some bears that look pretty high.
Yeah.
So that would explain
trippy.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bears, rabbits, you said?
Yeah, deer, different kinds of caribou.
And we know that they experience the intoxication?
Not fully.
Okay,
we don't know their experience, but when you see a reindeer on trippy mushrooms, it looks very trippy. So.
And are they doing them?
There's also.
Are they seeking them out at the type of interval where you would think that something is happening? For example, let's say you give a bear a bunch of psychedelic mushrooms one day.
Mm-hmm. I also know
the next day he walks past some and maybe he'd be like, "Oh man, I'm good. I need a few days to digest this."
I heard from a vet here in west side of Los Angeles that there's a particularly high amount of incidents where dogs are brought at late hours, if not middle of the night, to this vet because they have consumed psychedelics by accident from their owners.
That would make sense.
That happens apparently exceptionally a lot in this part of this neck of the woods.
Or mushroom chocolates too.
Yeah,
because you got to bring your dog in if your dog eats chocolate.
Yeah, so chocolate is not good for dogs, but also there's a lot of dogs here in the west side of LA who've consumed copious amounts of psychedelics.
So if your dog starts talking, that's when you know.
That is. Have you
No,
your
not
dogs?
Not on purpose, but we did feel like Rue was on shrooms one day. I don't remember why. I think because he was watching this cartoon. He loves cartoons.
Yeah.
He really does. He watches cartoons
all the time. Yeah,
especially if they have dogs in the cartoons.
Yeah. That could have been. Anyway, honey mushroom, Oregon.
Honey mushroom.
Oregon.
We're going.
Yeah.
What does Four Sigmatic mean?
I think we already talked about it, but it's the mathematical way of saying that the top 50 to 100 top foods in the world. You take
That's Four Sigmatic.
Yeah,
That's
if you
what it means.
take-
Okay, I
if
didn't
you
catch
take-
that. Did you say that in this show?
Yeah, I did.
The shrooms must have been kicking in.
It's 45 minutes usually, so that would have made sense. So if you take in any sciences, including natural sciences, if you have a large enough sample size of anything and you compare it against single variable, it'll form a bell curve or a normal distribution. So for example, you take everybody who lives in Los Angeles and look at their height. Most people are average height, and then there's outlier short and outlier tall people. Same with IQ, yada, yada, yada. In nature, if you take all the foods that you can eat and you could look at their nutrient density, most foods are just okay. And then there's exceptionally bad foods and exceptionally good foods.
Right.
And in that normal
And then there's
distribution,
McDonald's.
every standard deviation in math is called a sigma. So if you call 4 sigmas, that would mean like the top 100 foods in the world.
So you explained all this earlier and I didn't catch any of it.
Yeah, pretty much.
Awesome. All right.
Great. Love it.
Well,
Lion's mane.
I mean, Four Sigmatic is available everywhere. And what I think is amazing is you built this whole thing without wearing pants.
Yeah, today I'm wearing pants, but I have mushroom pants.
Yep.
I don't know if they count as pants. They're more like loungy, more like pajamas.
Yeah. In the old country, is it common to do, in America we have the whipped cream bikini. Is that something that happens in high school with mushrooms?
No, not so much. It's just that kalasarikännit, which means to get drunk alone by yourself without wearing pants. That's more common.
That's the more common.
It's an actual word.
Kalasari
kännit. And it's just a word.
Well, I wish you many nights of kalasari kännit.
Thank you. I wish one to you as well.
Just one?
Yeah, just one.
Okay, well, I'll take what I can get. Thanks for coming on, man. Fascinating stuff, and to be continued.
Oh, of course, in Oregon.
Yes,
Yeah,
all right.
Love it.
Thanks so much for watching. If you want to hear a story that's even wilder than that one, click here. You only have 5 seconds though. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go!